Hello, welcome to the September 13th, 2024 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo, and I'm host of the live stream today. If you've not attended a live stream before, how it works is you could ask questions in the live chat field or simply ask questions by sending them via email to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in a real-time manner will probably soon be eclipsed, but we will try to go through all of the questions in chronological order as they were asked. And if you don't get an immediate response to your question, if we could avoid asking the same question over and over again, we will get through them. So if you could be a little patient, that would be appreciated. When asking questions, it's helpful if you could specify which version of Cubase you're running, whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, or which operating systems, if you're running Windows or Mac OS, or also which version number. So if you're running 11, 12, 13, that information is helpful. We should have an index of all of the topics that are covered in today's live stream. I'm going to see a concert tonight, so I won't have it posted tonight, but probably tomorrow. So look for it tomorrow morning. But if you wanted to, and each of those, the index will include timestamps, so you could quickly jump to particular topics. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered, and there's been over 34,000 different topics, you could go to cubaseindex.com. And we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating the wonderful site. We have two people that serve as moderators, Agent K and Jazz Dude. So we want to give a special thanks to them. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do this to make it a better community experience. So we'll give special thanks to them. We'll also give extra kudos to Jazz Dude for his work with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord. So it's a wonderful resource of information for the Steinberg community. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America. I primarily focus on Steinberg products. And I'm the host today. I'm presenting from just outside Washington, D.C. area in the United States. And in Alexandria, Virginia. And if you're watching live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. It's always fascinating to see people from all over the world. So with that, we will get started with questions. All right, Zephaniah asks, hey Greg, how do I set my audio track to stereo input and output in the audio connections window using Cubase 13 Pro on PC? So if we were adding a new track, so when we come over here, we go to your audio connections, and at this point we could choose to add a bus, and we could choose whether we want this bus to be mono or stereo. So let's say if I I have the input tab selected here, we could have my inputs. I could have multiple input buses, and if I wanted those to be stereo, we could just choose, or if I click on add bus, we could give it a name. So we could call this Zephaniah. Okay, so we created the buses. Now, how do we add a track to go to those? When we go to right click, we can say, let's add an audio track. And we can say it's a configuration is going to be stereo. So we want this to be a stereo track. I want it to go to my stereo in to which we created, and the audio outputs, I want it to go to Zephaniah. And then that track would do all the routing. So when you go to right click in the track control areas or click on the plus sign, once you select an audio track, you could choose which input, output, whether you want the track to be mono, stereo, 5.1, etc., all right from that particular window. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, so we have a question from Vargis Paniker. It says, when I use a chord pad, it kind of changes octaves without me changing it manually. How can I prevent this from happening and have the same throughout? Okay, so let's come over to say this Rhodes patch here, we'll go to our chord pads. All right, so we'll activate it here. And let me just check my audio, my routing here quickly, sorry. All right, so it could be, you know, there are different settings. So like when we come over here, and this is changed in kind of version 12 to 13. But if we come over, we could choose to kind of, if we are clicking on the chord pads, that we could you know, use different modifier keys. So if I could transpose using the shift key. And if I wanted to do different voices, I could use the alt for different chord tensions. And if we, I think if we are just hovering over and we're using the, so if I come over here and I click on the D minor chord and I use my mouse scroll wheel, that will scroll through the particular voices. So you could try that, and I think that if you just click on the lock here, that now when we go to scroll, so I could scroll through this pad, but this pad is locked, and as I use my mouse scroll wheel, it's not going to do the changing of the chord voicings unless I unlock it. So once the track is locked here, then I can't scroll, but I can scroll through tracks that are unlocked. So try just locking that particular chord pad and see if that helps with you. All right, so we have Tim K joining us from Zeist in the Netherlands, and his buddy, his cat, waves a big hello to my cat, Steven, and Stella, Mark Raven's dog, and any other pets. All right, he's ready to learn. All right, so we see Taylor from Pine Grove, Pennsylvania, just from Music for Real Peace Records. And then his first question is, what does ARA stand for? So I think it's Audio Random Access. So it's an acronym, and what ARA is a protocol to allow you to kind of do editing from one, from like a DAW into like another editing tool. So such as Spectral Layers or even Wavelab. So what we could do now is just come over here and say, okay, I want to open this in Wavelab, and now when I go to double click on a particular audio event, we get the Wavelab sample editor directly here in my Cubase environment. So I could do editing like Spectral Layers, Wavelab, Vocal Line, Melodyne are all popular ARA extensions, but it's Audio Random Access is what the acronym stands for. Okay, so we just see a question. What is the bit meter in Supervision used for? So it's to determine how many bits the actual file is. So as we're playing back, let's say if we come over, we'll create an empty project here. And let's take a loop. I'll just turn this down a bit. Okay, so as we play this particular loop, and we look at our supervision beat meter or supervision bit meter. So we will come over here. I'll just put this on the track and we'll put it as analyzer. So sometimes you want to figure out if a file is actually 16-bit, 20-bit, 24-bit, 32-bit, 64-bit. So when we come over, we can see our bit meter. So we can see that as I play this file right now, we can see that this is a 24-bit file. Now if I modify it in any way, so we haven't changed the level, so let's say I'm going to just modify this and move this up a little bit, that we could actually see that that particular audio file is 24 bits, or you can see if the file is 16 bits or 32 bits. So that's what the bit meter is, to show you kind of the bit depth of the particular audio file right there. Okay, so we see the next question. Let me get my monitoring computer to wake up. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. So wonderful to see Suede TV on. All right. And Music for World Peace Records also asks, can you explain in detail the matrix section of Retrolog? All right. So when we have a matrix section, this is kind of for like a modulation matrix. So let's say we're going to add a Retrolog instance. So we could use this to kind of change particular sounds. So let's say if I'm starting off with a basic, so let's say I'm starting off with kind of a basic sound. So one of the things I could do is, let's say, okay, I want it like this to be controlled by a different element. So I can say, let's take my modulation wheel, move over control surface here. So I'm going to take the mod wheel and let's control our destination, and we can say I want this to be cut off. So now as I move, as we come over here, we can now have the modulation wheel adjust the cutoff. So if we look at the modulation wheel here, when I move my controller, and we could set like, okay, the depth of that. So let's say if I move this more over to the right, or if we want to go kind of a negative value, so we could kind of have the opposite effect. We could have that open and kind of close. And we could also do a quick offset with that. Now we could also do some other interesting things. So let's say we want to introduce an LFO. So if I wanted something to constantly change, so we could go, and you can see that we have 4 different LFOs here. So let's say I want to go to this LFO. I want it to turn on and off here, and we will adjust, let's say, our frequency. So now we're going to say, let's have LFO1 control level. So as we do this, this is now turning on and off. I could adjust the frequency of that. Let's do a shape. And then we could change this to be sync mode. So we could say, okay, let's have it be set to quarter notes or eighth notes. And now as I move, so this just allows us to create kind of, very complex, I want this LFO to control my level, and I want LFO1 to also control, panning on the device. So as I play a particular note, but let's say I want LFO2 to do panning. So what I could do here is we could set a different rate for the panning, and I want the panning to be different kind of curve shapes. So we can say, okay, let's set this up for alpha 2. So now we can hear the panning. So this matrix will allow us to take our different sources, whether they're LFOs or controllers, and allow you to control and change different aspects of the sound. So let me know if that makes sense on when you watch on replay, Taylor. All right, so Bratman Studios is getting ready to watch the world's greatest Cubase club meeting on this Friday the 13th. I forgot it was Friday the 13th. Now I'm going to be jinxed. All right. All right, so we have Fly V, Vince checking in from Winnipeg, Canada. Thanks for joining us. All right, so you see Roland stuff. It says, when you're recording direct into the lower editor window to tidy up mistakes, etc., how do I set up the punch in and punch out points so I only record the bits I choose, please? Okay, so I'm not sure if it's audio or MIDI. I'm going to assume it's MIDI, but let me know if I'm wrong. All right, so let's say if I'm here. So I'm just going to set I'll just try setting the left and right locators. So right now we have the left and right locators around this section. So I'm going to just set my left and right locators here. So I'm going to hold down my Alt. So now let's say if I had recorded in, let's say, so I'm going to just record the synth here. And I'll just take out a loop. Sorry about that. All right, so if we wanted to punch in and punch out within the editor, so I set my left and right locators. I activate, I click on I and O. So now if we watch this, I'm going to play higher notes now. It punches into record, and we'll punch out of record. We don't have to have it necessarily in loop. So let's say if I take it out of loop, as soon as the play position gets to the left locator or right locator, it will punch in. I'm going to play high notes before and after, but you'll see if you watch the transport that the transport is now going to be punched in at the left locator, punched out at the right locator. So as we play. So even though I'm playing, we hear the high notes. It's only recorded in this particular editor. So if you're in the MIDI editor, just set the left and right locator. And if you want to use like the range tool, you could also just set a range and hit the letter P, and the locators will follow the range selection. So let me know if that makes sense for you. All right, Uno Mementos checking in from a rainy Finland. Let's see, Roland stuff. Just apologize for asking a question first without saying howdy. So I wasn't offended at all, but it's very kind of you. Wonderful to see Martin checking in from Germany. Always incredible to see the perfect attendance jazz dude on. Appreciate everything he does so much. All right, and we have Jan from Cubase Index checking in from Stockholm. IUL is sending happy Friday the 13th greetings from Switzerland. Thanks for being online with us tonight. Sorry, when Chatfield just jumped. All right, we see Matt Elliston on. Bratman Studios just saying Halloween's coming up in the U.S. around the corner. I guess it's becoming more popular in other countries as well. So we see Ecstasy Tunes says, "Hi Greg, will there be an in-depth tutorial for instruments available in Absolute 6? So there's a lot of the different tutorials available, but if there's something you don't understand, please, feel free to let me know and be happy to kind of help you out with that." All right, so we see Soren just saying hi to everyone, and he says he's more than happy that Greg got rid of a problem of his recently. Thanks again, Greg. Stream Deck shows no signs of lack of functionality too. So glad that worked out. It was nice chatting with you yesterday. All right, so we see Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. Wonderful to see you on. We have John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. So fantastic. See Tony Rooney says, "What concert, Greg?" So I'm going to see Hans Zimmer tonight in Baltimore, Maryland. Looking forward to it. Going with my friend Clay Ostwald. Going to take my son, but he's a little sick today. So, all right. Martin asks, Greg, can you show and try to drag audio events from Cubase to Wavelab and back? I mean, without using ARA, please. So, the easiest way I think is just if we have an audio event selected, go to your audio menu and just choose Edit in Wavelab, so you don't have to drag and drop. Then Wavelab will launch. You could do your edits in Wavelab. So let's say, okay, I came here, I delete it. So let's say I'll take a range, delete, and then all you have to do is, if we come over here, we could trigger the update in Cubase, and we can see that the edit that I've made in Wavelab is now automatically been applied to Cubase. So select the event. You don't have to drag and drop. Just go to Edit, Audio menu, to Edit in Wavelab. And then Wavelab will launch, and I'll trigger the update so we're back to our original file. So let me know if that works for you. Wonderful to see Tony Rooney on from Atlanta, Georgia. And I know he saw Hans Zimmer last Friday. And had a wonderful time seeing Peter Frampton perform on Tuesday night. Still amazing, doing 2 hours and 40 minutes. All right, so we have Hamo 1974 saying hello from Finland. All right, I see Soren says he doesn't have sound for me. I'm just going to do a quick monitor check here, make sure everything is coming through. Bear with me just for a second. Okay, so it seems like it's come through my monitoring computer, Soren. So let me know if anyone else isn't seeing or hearing. Let me know. All right, so we have All About Music, just sending his love from India. Thanks for joining us today. We have Jeff Thurston from a rainy Berlin. Always great to see Dallas LaRue from Las Vegas. Jazz Dude's telling everyone not to miss the current 40th anniversary Steinberg promotions. All right. We have Ali Dinesh Kali, or Kahi, just saying hello and hoping I'm doing well. So I'm doing great. Thank you. All right. Always wonderful again to see Razel Zamini from Denmark. All right, so we see Soren got the audio figured out. He had a wrong sound card selected. Happens to the best of us. All right. All right, so Daniel from Croatia just got in his car and doesn't want me to do anything important for 1 hour. Okay, we'll all wait for Daniel to get home. Or he could watch the replay, I guess. All right, so question. All Okay, so the question is from Ali. Is there any difference between first lowering 4 lines to -6 in making beat, kick, snare, close hi-hat, open hat, and then maximize them in master channel and clip to 0 all lines and use pre-gain? So you may not have to, so if you were kind of like, let's say if we had a beat here, so we'll solo just this beat. So let's say, if we take this and do -6 on that beat. Sorry, let me just... Okay, so say lowering 4 lines -6 and making beat, kick, snare, and then maximize them in the master channel and clip to 0 all lines and use pre-gain. So, I tend to approach, gain structure as, I get a good level kind of at the initial source, and then, just make sure I'm not pushing it throughout the entire signal path. So I tend personally, and there could be different thoughts in this, not to intentionally lower something to try to boost it later. I mean, I guess if you were doing like a specific flavor for compression, that it could be useful, but I don't think it's necessarily useful to kind of cut something here and compensate for it later. But, if I'm misunderstanding, let me know. All right, and so, and if other follow-up comments, maximize them in the master channel and clip to 0 all lines and use pre-gain on master channel to lower them, and then maximize, but which one is better? So I would try to just have like a good gain structure throughout the whole thing so that you're not having to compromise, and kind of artificially add gain. I think that's when people get into problems with gain structure, sometimes overthinking it and just trying to maximize gain to compensate for perhaps levels that were too low, or if it was too hot that you lower it. So I think if you're kind of working as you're recording, if you're kind of recording at -6, -12 to -6 dB, and have enough amplitude, that you're going to be in pretty good shape without having to worry about it so much. Wonderful to see the artist known as Love on. All right, Uno Memento just says, how much time do I have to consider buying Absolute 6 at 70% off? I think it's a great deal. You should do it right now, but I think it's going to last through September 25th, so less than 2 weeks, and could cut off European time in September. All right, wonderful to see Nick Saya on, and Dwight Cunningham from the Bahamas. Nick's in New York City metropolitan area. All right, we see Da Vinci Girl Daniela on from Bochum, Germany. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we see GK's music production. Keon, hello Greg, notice that the beat calculator tab seems to be missing in Cubase 13. Has it been removed or relocated? If unavailable, what's the best alternative for calculating or working with variable tempos? So, the beat calculator was kind of morphed into like doing tap tempo. So if you wanted to come over here, instead of coming to a particular beat, you could now just come over to tap tempo. And if we wanted to just do display, so if I come here and I just tap, we could now just have tap tempo take care of that. But a lot of things were also kind of set up. So let's say if I have this particular loop set to musical mode, a lot of the functionality of the beat loop, so let's say I want to, take this particular audio file here, so I could select this file, and when we go into the sample editor into definition tab, that a lot of these particular, once we say, okay, this is 4 bars in length, and we're in 4/4 time, that this will automatically calculate the tempo for us. So a lot of those functions of the beat calculator are kind of, directly inside of Cubase and other functions, but let me know if there's a a particular aspect of the beat calculator that you are using for a variable tempo. All right, wonderful to see Peter checking in from Montreal, Canada. All right, and he's asking if has anyone purchased or has plans to purchase the Absolute 6 redeemable offer. So. See, Roland Stuff says, thanks for answering my record punch in and out question, and it was referring to MIDI, so that's good. All right, John Kutsalinas asks, hi Greg, I just activated Cubase 13 Pro. I love the audio warping, but it doesn't work on the main project page. I'm taking all the right steps, but I can't create any edit points. Can you help? So it could really depend on the zoom. So, make sure, because when we go to the warp tool, there's 3 different modes. So you want to make sure that you're in free warp. And as we come over here, one of the things that we could do now is just kind of click. So, and you see this tool, but depending on your zoom factor, at a certain point, if your audio is here, you may be clicking and nothing is going on, but it needs to be within a certain factor of zoom, because otherwise it could just all be yellow vertical lines. So once we have that zoom factor here, we could put these points in, and it actually goes just to the left of the left arrow. So I could just kind of, if we want to zoom in here and say, okay, let's just take this, and I want my hit points, my warp markers to be placed right there, and now we could move those. So a lot of times when people say they can't find it, they could be in maybe not the free warp, but they may also be at, you can see that if you had a zillion warp markers here, that you wouldn't be able to see the waveform. That would all be kind of yellow vertical lines, and check your zoom factor. So give that a try and let me know if that's helpful and working for you. Okay, so Peter's, his voice is coming through loud and clear. All right. Martin Fallon, just checking in from Costa Blanca in Spain. So I'm just curious where Costa Blanca is, if that's in the south or what part. So maybe if you could answer that, Martin, just for my curiosity. All right. All right, and we see Brian Sawyer from Bealville, North Carolina. Always wonderful to have you on. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your new GR55 and your Godin. All right, Flyv asks, what's global automation? So when we kind of come over here, we have global automation set up. So let's say I have, 200 tracks of audio going on, and I duplicated this track, and so we have read automation going on in our mix console. So if we're watching our faders here, they're all kind of going out and about in different directions. So if I had like hundreds of tracks being utilized in my project, and what I could do is just come over here and globally turn off the read and write for all tracks. So this would be the global automation control. So if I didn't want to like put all the all tracks into write enable, I could just come right over here, and if we have a number of tracks, so we have a number of tracks that now I could click on W, and this would globally activate write mode for automation on each track, or we could globally turn or turn off read mode on each track for the automation. So those are the global automation setups. All right, so we see Ali just says, thanks, Greg, you're the best. Just glad to be able to help. All right, so Peter is just saying, Absolute 6, I'm seeing this offer is only valid to October 9th, 2024. So I think it's September 25th is if it's part of the 40th anniversary promotion. All right, so Tommy Valenko asks, sorry, my chat field just jumped on me. Is there a shortcut to switch ASIO buffer size for mixing and recording purposes? So when we actually are doing there isn't a keyboard shortcut. You could open up the studio setup, but when you get to the control panel where the buffer size is set, this is actually not a part of Cubase. It's generally part of the operating system if you're on Mac OS, part of the core audio settings, or this would communicate directly with the ASIO driver on Windows. So this part of the program where you set the buffer is actually part of the audio interface software and not part of Cubase. So that's why when it kind of leaves Cubase, we're doing it here with this particular thing. So, most people will manually set it instead of having I'm tracking versus I'm mixing to change the buffer size, because it's actually just simply it's being controlled through external software outside of Cubase. All right, so Peter's just saying this offers are only valid to October 9th, about Absolute 6. Yeah, I guess you could take a screenshot, but I would err on the side of caution if you could do it on September 25th. And it's, currently 70% off if you own Cubase Pro, Wavelab Pro, etc. See, nice comment. Cubase is the best DAW. Thanks. All right. Always fantastic to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. Glad you can make it. And the virtual ice cream distribution should begin. All right, so we see Ali Shaker, who connects CC MIDI with Korg PA5X. So I'm not, if it's, as long as it transmits MIDI, I'll take a look at it on my other computer here quickly just to see. I think that's maybe one of the Arranger keyboards. Maybe a performance like a stage piano. Let me just look at a bigger picture of it. Just looking at images of it. But yeah, it looks like there are faders on it. So what you can do is just simply come over here to your MIDI remote, and then you could, have the faders from your Korg automatically control different parameters inside of Cubase for you. All right, so we see question, does anybody know when sales on Cubase instruments will be? So let me know if it's Steinberg instruments or third-party instruments. But currently what's on sale is going to be, it's the big promotion currently, and different sales will cycle in and out. But Cubase and some of the iOS and mobile OS Android devices occasionally go on sale as well. All right, so we see, can the sampler detect keynote? So I think if it's like in the sampler name, in the sample name, so let's come over here. All right, so say if we do this, I'll create a sampler track, and we can see that the root key was automatically determined by the pitch. So let's say if we come over here to C major 7, okay, so let's say create sampler track, that it will automatically determine the root key. So if it's in the name, it will automatically do that, but if you have an audio file without that in the name or within the metadata, I think you may have to manually set it. And what some people will do is take a particular sample and come over to Vary Audio if you don't know what the pitch is, and say, okay, it's probably going to be around a C, and you could determine kind of the pitch and use that as the basis for the root key. But I don't think that when you drop it into the sampler track that it will do a determination other than if the name has the pitch, then that will be used as the basis for the root key in the sampler track. All right, so we have a question. Hi, how does one use the note repeat feature Groove Agent with a MIDI controller that doesn't have the note repeat feature built in? All right, so the note repeat is going to be used when we deal with the full Groove Agent. So, and this is a common kind of hip hop R&B technique. So let's come over to our full Groove Agent. This isn't available in the Groove Agent SE. So what I want to do now is we'll load up a quick kit, and okay. Okay, so let's say I want to take that particular pitch, and we come over here, we can see the performance tab. So we're going to activate the performance tab, and I'm going to just quickly come over and reassign some notes here. So we'll say so I'm actually just clicking and then clicking on the MIDI note itself, and that's assigning the value for that. So now when I play, so right now I'm playing each of these hi-hats. Okay, so had these hi-hats, and now so I hold down the pitch here, so I get eighth notes, triplets, So as I hold down a particular pitch, instead of having to play it multiple times, so again, so all you have to do now is just come over and I'll just assign these. So it could be any particular key. So hold down the pitch, the note that triggers the sample, and now. So at this point, I hold down the particular note and what rhythmic performance repeat that I want to do, and even if I wanted to add more swing to that. So I do this and so that's how you could utilize the performance for doing note repeat using the full groove agent. So let me know if that's helpful, or if you have any more questions on that. All right, we see that Michael Teams has granted Jazz Dude 1 gallon of mango mint ice cream. And I think that he'll include it, and Peter is asking if that's part of the absolute deal, so I believe it is. All right, sorry, my chat field. All right, jumped. All right, so we have Catherine Leduc checking in from France. And she's hoping everything is going fine for the Cubase tribe. All right, so we see question, any chance to see LA2A style compressor in a future release of Cubase? So I thought that if we come over here to so let's come over here to so I think that you could kind of use this one, the vintage compressor. I think would be more LA2A. It's the one I kind of use when I think LA2A might be slightly different. And then also check out the tube compressor as well. So I think between those two that you can kind of get LA2A style flavors with it. Michael Teams has confirmed that the ice cream is always free for Cubase masters. Okay, Martin has confirmed Costa Blanca is halfway down the east coast of Spain. I'm just south of Alicante. Yeah, when I was in high school, I spent 3 weeks in Gandia, which is south of Valencia. So I had a great time. Beautiful area. Okay, Jeff Thurston asks, Greg, I would like to record from a guitar. I plan to connect it to my audio interface, then from there into Cubase. Is that better than USB connection, and how do I set up a track to record them? All right, so let's say if you're going to record your guitar, we probably want to add an audio track. When we add an audio track, it's probably going to be a mono input from the guitar. So we would set your input, whatever physical input, and we could probably have the channel be stereo, and then all you'd have to do is record enable, and if you want to hear the guitar as you're recording it, click on the monitor, and you could give it a name as you add the track, and then that's all you'd have to do. So I wouldn't buy a dedicated, like, guitar out, quarter inch out to USB cable. If you have an audio interface, connect it directly into the audio interface, and you may, if you're recording directly like that, you may see a little switch on for the inputs for high Z inputs, and if you have a high Z switch for your audio interface, use the high Z switch, because that would be the right impedance coming from like directly out of a guitar or an electric guitar or electric bass. Okay, so we see Tim K that maybe the loyalty vouchers last till October 9th, but the big sale on 50% off is going through maybe September 25th. So I'll check that after the live stream. All right, so we see Michael Teams has granted myself and my family 1 gallon of mint chocolate chip ice cream for you and the family. And it says, keep up the great work. All right, well, thank you. It's very kind of you. All right, so Tommy Valenko asks, question, if I had an audio song with variable tempo, how can I put it to grid to find the right tempo? Because tempo detection sometimes don't calculate right. Thanks. Can you show an example of tapping tempo? Okay. So if we're going to do, let's take a new project here. We'll import a file with varying tempo. Just find something I won't get a copyright strike on. All right, so say I want to do, so if you want to do like tap tempo, so if it's going to be varying, so, the tap tempo function never really kind of worked with varying tempo. So if you want to do a tap tempo type functionality, what you could do is we can add just a MIDI track. So let's say as we play along here. Let me let you know what I'm about. And I'm just going to tap. What is outside in the... Let me take off my loop here. Let me let you know what I'm about. And I'm just tapping every beat. What is outside in the cold? I walk alone to my own beat. And so now that I've kind of tapped in my tempo here, I just tapped a single MIDI note in. I could take that selection and we go to MIDI, and under functions you'll see calculate tempo from hit events, and we'll say, okay, the distance of notes is quarter notes, and now we could just have let me let you know what I'm about and what is in. So you could just kind of calculate that way. But when you do the tempo calculation, so let's come over here and I'll show you a trick with the tempo calculation. because we may go, so if I want to take this and we don't have a tempo, so I'll just take this off record and lower the volume so you can hear it. So I'm going to go to my project menu, and again we will say let's go to tempo detection. Now when it does this analysis, it leaves it open right now and switches you to the time warp tool. So now we're in warp grid. So if we find that, okay, maybe there was a particular drum fill that threw it off. What I could do is let's say, okay, this one was late or early. We could adjust this hit point and it will recalculate everything before and after. It will recalculate all the tempo afterwards so that we could just have that. So once you do the tempo detection, you know, why it puts you in this particular mode is so that, so let's say, okay, this is where the downbeat is right here. So now it will, and it will do the analysis from that point onward. So if you notice that it's off, just, you know, it puts you in this mode so that you could listen to it and make changes, and then that will automatically do it, which will be probably much faster and more accurate than doing tempo changes itself. So, but also one of the tricks you do is, you know, once you're in warp grid mode, let's say even after, if we just go to your warp grid mode, you know, every time that we want to move a particular event, you could just manually adjust the grid. So we move the bar lines to match the actual measures as we see in the project like that. So you could manually do it, which I think would still be faster than doing kind of tap tempo. But if you want to do tap tempo, just open up a MIDI track, you know, record MIDI data, go to your functions submenu of the MIDI, and then you'll see calculate tempo from MIDI events. All right, so we see from Ali, just says thank you so much. All right, so we see DaVinci Girl says, Greg, some help for calculation in Cubase 13 is not one feature I really need, so upgrade is reduced to 49 euros. If Cubase regular starts with version 14, the upgrade from 12 to 14 is 99 euros or more. So generally the upgrade from 12 to 14 going kind of 2 generations, that might be 149. So I'll just check. It's going to be, I think it's usually $99 to go from like 11 to 12 or 12 to 13. But let's just come over here. So since it's 50%, so let's say if you're going 12 to 14 or 12 to 13, the update is usually $99, so it's 49. And if you're upgrading from Cubase Pro 11 to 13, that would be $199. So, so you do, and it's $99 on the current promo. So I'm sure that, you know, there's about 200 features that were introduced in Cubase 13. I'm sure, you know, you could find use for some of the features. See, Michael Teams is debating about getting the Rost A synth. This is demo sound absolutely fabulous. It's a wonderful Hallian instrument. All right, so we see from Soren, just says, I'll do a pedagogic video for my blind friend now for a while. He is giving Cubase Elements a second chance. I should try to help him. I'll make a video and repeat the keyboard shortcuts for him also. All right. Okay, so Tony Rooney asks that he bought Wavelab Elements at 50% off, and he got this message: VST2 plugins are not supported in Apple native mode. If you want to use VST2 plugins, start Wavelab in Rosetta mode. Is this something I need to be concerned about? Yeah, so VST2 plugins won't run natively under Apple Silicon because it was kind of released like 12 years before Apple Silicon. So I think all the plugins that you're utilizing, Tony, are VST3. So just about every plugin manufacturer is migrated to VST3. So I don't think it's anything that you have to worry about. If you had plugins from 2008 and earlier that you're still using on your current system, then that could be an issue if you haven't found a replacement or migrated to later versions. So. And you probably had a similar message when you started Cubase in Apple Silicon mode, but you may have just forgotten about it. So we see Tim Cage just says he's still waffling for budgetary reasons on getting the upgrades. He has to save enough for his oldest kid's birthday presents. And you should get your oldest kid Cubase, and then you can kill two birds with one stone. It's a good, you can do music production with your son. Sounds like a good father-son project, but we understand. All right, so you see Brian is enjoying his new gear that he got. It's GTR 55s, and he's enjoying it so much he's losing sleep. That's a good place to be with new equipment. All right, so Robert Verbeek just asked, how do you auto color your tracks? Okay, so like when I'm doing a new project, let's come over here. I'll remove these selected tracks. So it's going to be a preference. So if you go to your preferences or settings on later Mac OS versions, you'll see under user interface, track, and mix console channels. So I believe that the default setting is use track's default colors, which may all be gray. So what I choose is to use previous track color +1. So now when I go to add a number of tracks, that all of the track colors will be incremented based upon your track colors in the project. So again, come over to preferences, user interface, track and mix console channel colors, and then I usually select use previous track color +1 to increment, or you could have it be the same if you want. All right, so you see from DaVinci Girl says it's not clear why I should take the offer now to pay at least more for things I do not need. The drum machine I do not use. The media library is proprietary and not compliant to UCS standard I use. So the media library is not proprietary. So, it's available to use in every VST3 plugin. So, but, you could maybe check out I think it was November 3rd of last year, we did kind of a full live stream walkthrough of all the features. There's about, 200 or so, there's 2 hours and 20 some minutes where you could see a walkthrough of all the features. But, but if none of those are appealing to you, that's fine. Okay, my chat field just jumped. Let me. All right, so Enrique Marsal just says, let me give advice, please. Put the resolution higher. I can't read the letters when I zoom here in YouTube. So, when you're doing a live stream, you're kind of fixed to the live stream transmission. Once it's, you could also, like if you're looking at YouTube, go to the YouTube settings. And then the resolution is dependent and kind of set by YouTube automatically based upon your connection speed. So everything is being transmitted as a 1080p HD video, but you may have to go to your settings in your YouTube and be able to adjust that. But there are, I can't do 4K transmission for a live stream. So I think we could do 1080p resolution for live streams. But again, if it's not showing, go to your YouTube and go to the little cogwheel and adjust the screen resolution there, because it's for someone watching that's determined by your internet speed, and YouTube kind of optimizes it for that, but you could often override those particular decisions. All right. All right, so Enrique Marsal just says, amazing, the free Extreme instrument for Hallian, and just wants to say thanks. Yeah, so that was a really super great thing that Steinberg did. Great way to roll out Hallian 7.1. All right, Charles Parente asks, question for a single VST MIDI track in a key editor. Can certain notes have different color than other notes on the same track? Aloha, and thank you for this amazing live stream resource. So saying aloha makes me want to go to Hawaii again. But yeah, so we could colorize based on a number of different aspects. So let's go take a look. All right, so our current color scheme is based on velocity. So, and I'll just make this larger so we could all see it. All right, so if we have notes that have lighter in color, that would indicate that they're lighter in velocity. So as we move notes up in velocity or down in velocity, we could do that. Now we could also choose to colorize by pitch. We could colorize by the channel, so that could be based upon what the channel color is that we're actually utilizing. We could choose colors based on the grid match, different sound slots. So if you're utilizing something with additional functions for like with articulations and expressions for if you're doing orchestral stuff, if you wanted to have like SATB voices or notes that are within the chord and scale. So if I come and we set a scale assistant and I want to use the editor scale, so let's make it a C sharp major, that we could actually colorize based upon based upon the actual, and if you wanted to see what the colors are, so if something is within a chord, within the scale, you could have, or if it's not in the, if it's in the chord and scale, you could just kind of change. So when you go to the MIDI editor, you can change how the different items, and you can see a setup for each of them at the bottom. So we can say, okay, you want to see the pitch, and so each pitch could have a different color if you want it. So if you have like synesthesia, where different notes can evoke different colors, you could set those up right there. So yeah, just where you see almost like the painting easel, it'll default to velocity, but there's plenty of other parameters that you could use for setting the colors for MIDI notes. All right, so we see from Tommy Valenko just saying thank you, Greg. So you're welcome. All right, so John just says, hi, Greg. Yes, I was assuming that wouldn't enable the audio warping in a project window. Many thanks. All right. Tony Rooney just says, yay. All right. Daniel is asking, how was my concerts? Yes, I saw Peter Frampton on Tuesday. He was incredible, as always, even though he has kind of a degenerative muscle disease. He has IBM. And yeah, he played for 2 hours and 40 minutes, and he could still take almost any performer. So it was great to see him perform. Just really wonderful. All right, so Darren Flake asks, hi Greg, question. How to disable effects tracks in a project when using multiple effects in a template? Should I add effects inserts in channels or groups instead? And how to reduce memory usage for templates. So if you have a big template, one way to reduce memory usage is just to, come over here, and what a lot of composer friends of mine are doing is, just having tracks disabled until they go to use them. So you could just go in here and say, okay, I have this track. Now I want this sound. So once the track is disabled, the plugins aren't taking any processing. It's not adding to any latency within the system. And you say, oh, now I need this. I'll just right click and let's enable. And now I could just go and play and have access to that particular area. Let me clear my throat real quick. All right, so, and we see if we have FX tracks, so let's say if I come here and I add an effects channel. So again, once I go to my effects channel, let's see if I think. And one of the other things that we could do, it doesn't look like the effects, is if we go to the project logical editor, you could do stuff like, okay, we want to, media type is or I'll just say, let's say container type is equal to track. And I could set a condition, a property that the track is set to is selected. And then if we go to track operation, we can say inserts or enable insert slot by number. All right. So now I could come over here and I'll just do the same track operation. And we could do this for all 16. So I'll just show this for example. And I think that you could download this preset from the Cubase Nation Discord. So Mac is in a weird mode. Let me just get back to it here. Oh, sorry, I have something resting on my keyboard. All right, so I'm going to choose to disable here. So you could do this for, kind of repeat it for all right, so let's say I have one track in here that has a number of inserts. So as soon as I do this, I could disable all of my inserts. So, and then even if I have a effects channel track, so the effects channel track has an insert. So if I select the effects channel track with this particular logical editor, that we could just, and we could also choose to toggle instead of disable. So this way you could use one preset to enable, disable, basically turn it off. So we'll say, okay, let's get to my track operation, and we'll say enable insert slot. We will toggle, and I want this for slot 6. Do that for all 16. So I select the effects channel track that's disabled. I hit apply. That's enabled. We'll go to this track where we have a number of inserts. And if we want to toggle those inserts, and this bypasses the plugin, so it's not taking, it's not contributing to delay or taking any CPU processing. So you could just simply do that, and that will turn off and on all of your inserts on selected tracks. You could do it for the entire project if you want, or just for selected tracks. Okay, wonderful to see Gerald Ely from Martinez, California. All right, Peter is asking Michael Teams what Rasta is, so we'll show it real quick. So it's just a synth that can run inside of Hallion or Hallion Sonic. So let's add a Hallion Sonic here, and it's kind of like kind of very Oberheim-ish. So we'll come over here. So we'll see Rasta. So So just a really wonderful synthesizer. So, and again, that's sold separately, but just a great instrument. Just all right. Okay, so sorry, my. Okay, so we have from Isadora Elias. I understand that Cubase score editor can produce guitar tablature from MIDI or from notation. Can you review how this is done, or is it a job for Dorca? Yeah, so Cubase has been doing guitar tab for I think since '94. So let me just open up a quick project here. Okay, so let's say if we want to look at, we'll open this up, say, okay, we have, so what we want to do for like a guitar part is double click and we go into the score settings. We could select tablature. We want guitar, we could adjust the tunings and now kind of hit apply. And we could choose to not have the mirror staff. And now you could just have the guitar tablature. We could also come over here if you don't want to hide the stems. And then as we look at it, we could see the guitar tablature that's being utilized. And if we want to take a note and move it to a different string, we could right click and then you can move it to a particular string for you. So again, just kind of come over, go into the score settings, click on tablature, and then just enable tablature mode. Okay. All right, so I think I may miss this question. Let me just, about how do I create a Prodigy style loop in Groove Agent? Seems like there should be some groove or loop generator. Am I missing something? So again, the full version of, let me just see if I get my Mac is like in a weird zoom. All right, so let's take a look. So I haven't listened to Prodigy in the forever. I did lend them my Atari computer for a gig when their computer went bad, like 1992. But if you want to create like a quick drum beat, you could. So Groove Agent that comes with Cubase doesn't have kind of like its own internal sequencer, since you're running it in a DAW that has great sequencing capabilities. But if you wanted to come over here, we could just say, okay, I want to go to like a MIDI insert, and you could go to like the Beat Designer MIDI plugin, and at this point we could just say, okay, we're going to take this particular pattern, so I'll just start from scratch here. So we'll say, okay, let's go to Beat Designer, and I'm going to automatically, okay, so we have our drum map set up. So let's say I want to start off with kick. I'll do a snare. Let's do a clap. So we'll start with, and so we'll come over here and just and then once you kind of come over here, so we could see all the different sounds that are available within the instruments, automatically been extracted. So if you want to put in different flams as well, so it increase or decrease velocity, or if you wanted to adjust the amount of swing, on each individual one. So you could use the Beat Designer or the included drum editor to make your beats, because you have those tools that are already available. If you had a full Groove Agent, you can make beats within the pattern editor. But the Groove Agent SE, you could use Beat Agent or the Beat Designer or the particular drum editor for that. All right, wonderful to see Nick on from Essex in the UK. Glad you could join us. All right, so we see Daniel just says you mentioned a walkthrough of all the features. Sounds like just what I need. Where exactly is it? So if you could tell me all the features of what, I'd be happy to kind of do with that. So Patrick Emanuel, hey, great to see you on. Hi, Greg. Is there any frequency splitter tool in Cubase? So if we wanted to, let's say if we have I want to take this particular drum loop, so we'll solo this loop here. All right, so what we could do is use some of the other tools for kind of splitting frequencies. So I'll just come over here to an insert. Let's grab, even if we want to grab, like, I think the Imager plugin is good for this. So if I only want the low frequencies, I could solo, or if I want my low mids, we could solo each frequency range. So this is the only frequency range we're hearing, or if I only want to hear this or my high frequencies. So you could just use this plugin and just solo individual frequency ranges. Okay, so DaVinci Girl just saying Dorico is not compatible with MuseScore. So I think probably does MuseScore. I'm not familiar, I don't use it too much. So does it export music XML files? I mean, they're not going to be exactly the same programs, you know, and you could say that MuseScore is not compatible with Finale. So I'm not sure exactly what if you wanted to exchange projects back and forth, music XML or standard MIDI would work well. All right, so Robert Verbeek just says, thanks, Greg. Keep up this great live content and have a nice weekend. So thanks for joining us. All right. All right, Eric Foster says, I've never seen that lightning bolt before. So if you see this lightning bolt here in the kind of the upper left-hand corner, so if you have multiple projects open, what this indicates is that this particular project is active. So I have this project open and this project. So when I hit play, this project is the one that plays. But so when you play this, but if I activate this project by hitting the lightning bolt, so now when we come over to this project is now activated and plays. So that just, when you may not see it until you have multiple projects open, and then once you have multiple projects open at that point, you would use that to activate between which of the open projects are activated. See, Michael Teams just recommend everyone listen to Alaska by UK with Alan Holdsworth on guitar. Yeah, so Alan was a big Cubase nut, so I used to really enjoy helping Alan and got to go to his house a couple times and spend the afternoon going over Cubase stuff with him. He was incredibly humble for his abilities. Just incredibly humble, and just, you know, I always felt bad when he asked me a Cubase question. I'm like, you're such an amazing guitar player. So you don't have to worry about asking a question. Okay, so we see from Patrick Manuel A. Greg, is there any way to add chords for selected bass notes other than drawing? All right, so let's say if we have like bass notes here. Or I think we have piano we could use. All right, so let's say we come over here and all right, so let's say I come here and we add Okay, so let's say if we have these notes, I mean, we could create I may have created a logical editor preset for this as well. Let me see if I have it in a macro. But we could make a logical editor preset basically to take this particular note, knock it up an octave, and then from there add, so let's come over here. Let's see if I have like the macro. Already created. Okay, so I have a macro here that's root note to major chord. All right, so I have a root note to major chord and a root note to minor chord. Let's just see if okay, I'll make the macro here for you. So let's say if I want to come here, take this, our root note here, let's add an octave, then a major third, and a minor, and a perfect fifth from the root position. All right, so we'll go to our logical editor, and let me just see if we have add. All right, so we have like add a major third. So when I do this, we can now just come over here and say, let's add a major third, and then we could add, conversely, a minor third above that. So we could kind of do that. So I'm going to tie these into a macro, and I'm going to set a new one. We'll add an octave. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a macro. So I want to come here. Let's delete. Okay, so we'll now come over to our project logical process, logical editor presets. I'm going to add an octave, add that command. Okay, so now I'm going to take this selected note, run the macro. I now have a major chord. So let's say if I want it to be all right, and then if I want to duplicate this, we could say, okay, this will be a minor chord. And I'm just going to flip this down. So now I could run this, and from the selected note, we can make it a minor a minor chord and make this a major chord. And so those are some ways you could do it, and you could just have keyboard shortcuts to create those particular macros to add those intervals for your notes. So let me know if that makes sense. Great to see you back on, Patrick. All right, so we see from Patrick Emanuel A, it says adding multiband compression and transient shaper as inserts or using in send tracks. What is the best way to use? So generally, I would add those specifically as inserts as opposed to sends, because you're often not going to be blending. Not going to be blending those, or and I think that the transient shaper would respond differently depending on if you have multiple tracks going to it. So something with different transients could affect the transients of a hi-hat versus the transients of a kick or snare. They could be very different settings that you would use overall. So I would definitely utilize those particular plugins, the multiband compressor and the others, as inserts, so that we can just have control over the individual components or the elements within that. So the envelope shaper is like a great transient designer. So if you want more punch or more sustain, and the multiband compressor will allow you to have compression, but to carve different frequency ranges for different levels of compression. So I wouldn't utilize those as sends, but as inserts. See, DaVinci Girl doesn't like the GUI, feels it's depressive. But you can change a lot of the GUI elements, but it's also designed where you could look at it for long periods of time without eye strain, so which a lot of our users do. Okay, sorry, my chat field jumped. All right, so we see Patrick Emanuel A says, Greg, is there a way to strum chords like guitar in Cubase, but with a master MIDI logical editor, other way other than cutting each time? So, one of the things that you could do is, let's say we have, let's do a new project here. All right, so I'm going to start off with a chord track just to populate some. Okay, so I'm just going to load up a quick guitar instrument here just so you get a sense. Okay, so all right, so I'm going to take this. All right, so let's say we have chords here that are just now playing. All right, so one of the cool things that you could do is check out, so I think even like the Apache has some great chord presets. So now we can so even just kind of where you may not have to I could set these to different kind of rhythmic values as well. So you could kind of play around with some of these, and there's a lot of different. But, and if you wanted to kind of actually edit strums in, again, just come over here to like this tool, the trim tool. And I think if you just hold down kind of the Alt, that you could just kind of draw in different stem shapes if you wanted different feels like that. But check out some of the built-in arpeggiators as well, because you do lots of great chord stuff with that. All right, so DaVinci Girl says that with the GUI that Steinberg should maybe employ some women. So actually, one of the chief user interface designers is a woman named Vanessa. So we have lots of female developers working on user interface aspects of Cubase. All right, wonderful to see JVI on. He's like number 73. So see, Carlton Joseph says, hi Greg from UK, just want to know if you've used Native Instruments Machine 2 as a VSTI and how do you use it? Thanks. So I really haven't used it. I tend to use Groove Agent for all my kind of drum and percussion, so I may not be the best person to comment on that. All right, so we have Fadi asks, hi Greg, how do you add reverb while recording vocal audio track, listening to reverb while recording? All right, so to do that, we could add a audio track. So let's say this is going to be our vocal, and let's add an effects channel track, and we'll have this as our reverb. So what we want to do is now come over, and as we record, we want to make sure that this vocal track is going into the reverb. So we'll come over here and just say, okay, we're going to go to Ascend and say we're going to send this to the reverb. So now as we are tracking, we're going to hear the reverb. Now the reverb could impose some latency depending on the reverb. So you may want to go with a simple reverb that has lower latency. So, but now as soon as you click on monitor as you're recording, the vocal isn't recorded with the reverb, but you're monitoring with the reverb. If you have this all set up and it's still not sounding, what you may have to do is to go to your studio menu to studio setup and then choose to make sure that direct monitoring is not turned on. If direct monitoring is turned on, the audio signal goes straight from the audio input to the output and bypasses the audio engine. That will minimize latency, but you won't hear the effects. So just add your vocal track, add an effects channel track. You can do it as a send, and then make sure direct monitoring is not checked. And then you could hear the reverb while you're recording. And if you have like a Steinberg UR interface, you could, come over here and have built-in reverb. So let's say if I come over here, we'll set, let's say our, let me just make sure my routing is set up. So say I want to come here, we have our so if you have like a UR interface, what's great about that is you can put it into direct monitoring, and now you could have the RevX reverb, and this is powered by the unit itself, and you could have the reverb coming from the audio interface, and that will handle all the latency issues for you. So if you have like a Steinberg UR that has built-in reverb, so you can monitor without having any issues with latency. All right, so we have Jay from Secret Studios. Great to see you on. And he says lately he's gotten very few notification reminders regarding a live stream, just a heads up. We try to do it at the same time every week so that you could join us. But we're but great to see you on. And I think it's probably YouTube that would send out the reminders. All right, Best Green Jesus is on. He's been lurking. All right, so Vlad Sava says, "Hey Greg, can Cubase use OSC in any way?" Um, I believe that you could just. I think a lot of people use it. I personally haven't used it, but I think a lot of people use it for setting up like remote control functionality. So you kind of build like a remote control template. So that works great with Cubase. So I know people use that to and a lot of people started utilizing it for if it's the same OSC that I'm thinking of, utilizing it with generic remote, so that as you kind of come over here, you could add the generic MIDI remote and then assign the different buttons to automatically transmit MIDI messages that could then execute different functions inside of Cubase. So you use it to kind of drive controllers from tablets and stuff like that. See, Jazz Dudes posted an Alan Holdsworth video. So yeah, he was kind of otherworldly. See, John Koskian is going to chew out Mr. Tube personally so that Jay from Secret Studios gets his notifications. All right, Daniel, with clarification. Sorry. So it came a bit late, but you said there was recently a video more than 2 hours showing features of something. I just assumed it was Cubase 13. Yeah, so I think usually when a new version comes out, we will do kind of a detailed walkthrough. So when Cubase 13 was released, I think it was November 2nd of last year. So November 6th, or when we did, I think it was November 3rd, I think we did kind of like a 2-hour walkthrough of all, specifically the new features in Cubase 13. Okay. See, Tim Weinheimer just says, Greg, what is the best way to convert a MIDI track to an instrument track from a MIDI file in Cubase 13 Pro? So the MIDI tracks don't really convert to instrument tracks, but let's say if I had this in a MIDI track, what you could do is just simply move the data from the MIDI track to the instrument track. When you go to import MIDI files, if you go to your preferences and go to MIDI file, what you could do here is choose a destination to instrument tracks, and then you could assign those particular instruments. So, and the default setting is to load up like a Hallian Sonic multi-timbral, which will be like a general MIDI sound bank by default. But when you import, if you don't want them to convert the MIDI tracks to instruments, just select the destination to be instrument tracks right there. All right, so Patrick Manuel A just says, thank you, Greg, it helped. All right, so you see David Reuter and Kristen Precy from Big Tent in Nashville. So yeah, I'm doing great and looking forward to seeing both of you hopefully October 23rd. Anyone who's in the Nashville area will be doing kind of a Club Cubase in person on October 23rd in Nashville. All right, so we have John Howland sending greetings from Nixa, Missouri in USA. I actually looked it up, make sure. So, and it's like, whew, I was right, it was in USA. But thanks for joining us again, John. Okay. Okay, so Bratman Studio just says, hi Greg, I was playing with the L button and it only works on audio track. Did I notice you had also on other tracks in the background, but much lower? Thanks. So let's give it a shot. I think this one I didn't really use instrument tracks. Try a different project. Right, so these are all instrument tracks and they will all have so when I go to like instrument tracks, they will also so I could dim the other instrument tracks. So we just want to listen to horns, have our tracks muted. Of course, I pick a passage we're not playing, so let's say we'll get to. So when we solo a track, all the other tracks are muted, but when we click on the listen bus, we could have the other tracks just dim, so that this track will. We could hear it kind of up above the other tracks. So I don't think MIDI tracks would do that, but instrument tracks should allow you to do that. Let's take a look. If we go to our effects channel, and of course if we have the effects channel, we could monitor only the reverb and isolate the reverb. So if you wanted to EQ the reverb or just listen to just only the reverb, you can click on the L button on the reverb, the effects channel track. So, and I imagine groups would also have the listen bus. Okay, so we see Jacob Larrabee. Please can you explain me why all the time Cubase DAW pause for seconds before it continues whenever you add an audio track or an instrument track? What happens when we go to add like an instrument track, right? So everything is doing delay compensation. So like if we have effects that take a lot of processing power, so it shouldn't be like a second. So if I wanted to add an audio track, I come here, my audio track is added. So, but it's automatically, what a lot of programs do is as they add a track, that track will play out of time until you hit stop, and then it does the compensation for any delays that are imposed by processing on other tracks or on the track that you just added. When, so what we do is instead of having your track play out of time, they do the compensation, and then as the track is added, it's automatically compensated for. See, Peter says he forgot to hit the like button. So I'm just curious if Best Screen Jesus took advantage of the promotion to get his absolute. Okay, so a question. I would like to address different MIDI instruments from one MIDI track. The notes should address different instruments. Is that possible? Yeah, so let's take a look. So do new project. I'll just add a couple tracks via instruments. So let's add a Hallian Sonic. I want to do like an amped Electra. So we'll have that. I want that to be layered with a synth. All right, so we have those two. Let's add another instrument. All right, I'll try different instruments. All right. I'll try just a different, see if I can find our preset. All right, so I have these three instruments. So we'll come over here. So we have all right, so now what we can do is add a MIDI track. Okay, we will come over to what we call MIDI sends. I'll activate 3 MIDI sends. Let's close my inserts here. And we want to route this to our Hallian Sonic, to our Retrolog, and to Pad Shop, and we have up to 4 sends. So now I have this one MIDI track. And I could record on this one track. That will play back sounds from the other. And what we could actually do here is come over and say, okay, on the Hallian Sonic track, I could actually put in like an arpeggiator. So as we do this, so we can say, okay, I want this to be, you know, different arpeggios. So we can say, okay, let's just have this go down. So as we would play back a note, that one voice could do different arpeggios as well. So add a MIDI track. If you have instruments that are loaded into your rack, you could do that, and then just use the MIDI sends, activate it, and choose the destination. And one MIDI track could output it to 4 different instruments. Okay, so Catherine Leduc says, I love the Cubase GUI interface, can work hours without eye fatigue, it's great. So I'm assuming that Catherine is a female, so it's a good perspective for Daniela. Okay, so we see how to apply one pattern to all selected chords. I have some pattern. I need to apply that pattern to be played by all the chords. Okay, so let's say I came up with a pattern here. Okay, so let's say okay, so let's say I have that particular pattern. I'll quantize it. So let's say we'll listen to it here. Let me just make sure I have the right. Okay, so if I want to take that particular pattern and apply it to different chords, what we could do is I will come over here to my MIDI inserts. Let's just grab it. Say, okay, we go to Apache SX. I drag and drop that pattern. So let's say I don't have that pattern anymore and I have just some block chords, which I'll make quickly. Okay, so right now we have and I'll just give this like more space since we did like a 2 measure. All right, so I'll just extend this part over. Okay, so say we have chords here. So since it's going through this particular MIDI remote, so if we listen to it, I turn this on and my little phrase. So that's like the little thing that I played. I dragged it into here. So, and when we look at this, we may notice that they are all spread out as different chords. So we look at it in the MIDI editor, it looks like block chords until we actually come over here and we choose to freeze MIDI modifiers. And then our pattern that was playing back is now applied to the actual event. So take the little musical motif, drag it into the Apache SX, have that as a MIDI insert, and then once that is on, you can come over and just go to your MIDI menu to freeze MIDI modifiers. And then the effects, what's been generated from the MIDI arpeggiator is then applied to the event. So it's basically almost like rendered into the event. And then so you could apply that to multiply selected events. So let me know if that works for you, Patrick. All right, wonderful to see Mark Rabin. Everyone say woof to Stella's dog. And Mark is joining us from Montana. All right, sorry, my chat field jumped on me. Okay. All right, wonderful to see Steve Allen. All right, so he says, greetings, Greg and all. Comping 14 drum mic tracks in a folder. Is there a project logical editor to open close lanes for all tracks in the folder at once? So yeah, we just, this is kind of our topic that we did just a while ago. So let me create this scenario. Yeah, I got this question from kind of famed engineer Kim Person. So I'll just add, we'll start with like 8 tracks. All right, and I'll do just a quick multi-track recording here. So we'll put it in cycle. Let me just put all these into a folder. Then we could record and enable the folder. All right, so we'll do another recording. All right, so we have a number of different passes here. And we probably want to do like a multi-track comping, and if we do that, we want to take all of the events here and open up the lanes for each of the events, so that, but we want to do this for every single track. Okay, so let's come over. I think I still have it as a preset. Go to your project logical editor. All right, let me see if I just type. All right, so Kim's question was if they were all routed to a particular group. All right, so okay, so she had them all routed to a drum group and wanted to open up the drum group. So, but let's. Okay, so let's say I have the folder selected. So say container type is equal to folder track, and then I think that we could say property set to parent object is selected. All right, just make sure I'm not going down wrong. Okay. Try this. Okay. All right, so what we just did, let me just go ahead and okay, so right now I have the folder track here, and I said we're going to say control container type is equal to track, and the property is set to if the parent object is selected. In this case, the parent object is the folder track, and then on the post process, we want to say edit lane display type. So when we do this, so now come over there, all of the tracks in the folder were automatically shown to do that. And let's see if it works when it's closed. As well. So say all this is closed. So, and we could set a pre-process for unfold. So now I'm going to unfold the tracks, and then we're going to select all of the tracks within the folder, and then on the post process, edit lane display type. So if I did this right, now all the tracks are opened up. So I'll save that as a preset. So again, we want to project unfold tracks. So if they're not, and you don't need this if the folder is already opened. If the folder is closed, you can include this. We're going to say container type is equal to track. Property is set to the parent object is selected. So when the folder is selected, at that point, then we open up the lanes on all of the tracks. So let me know if that makes sense for you, Steve. So again, if you have the folder track open, but then you can say open, we're going to take the track that are where the parent object is selected and lane display, edit lane display type, open up the lanes. Great to see you on, Steve. Hope you're well. All right, so Mark Rabin just says his last week since he returned from Washington State. He's dug deep into Cubase like never before. Oh, I adore this program so much. Stella likes it too. That's great. Hope you had a great trip, and we hope Stella's doing well. I look forward to seeing Stella on the next Zoom social meetup. All right, Brian Sawyer Sr. says, wow, now the proud owner of Dorico Pro 5. That's great. Congratulations. You'll love the program. He says you got to love those vouchers. All right, Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. All right, Gravity Thief asks, hi Greg, thank you for all you do. Thank you for all you do. Is there a MIDI controller function that allows you to slide up or glide between notes, or is that a function of the VST instrument itself? So it's usually the VST instrument, like if it responds to portamento, but sometimes people will utilize, let's say if we come over here to like a retro log patch. But a lot of times people may use pitch bend, and retrolog, you could set the pitch bend range right here, so you could actually. So people, if the instrument itself doesn't support portamento, or if you don't have a portamento control wheel, you can often kind of use pitch bend. So you say, okay, I want my pitch bend to be plus 12 on up, so you could go. Just kind of using the pitch bend wheel, so you could try that, but a lot of times many instruments may not support it. But let me know if that would kind of make sense for what you're envisioning the function to do. All right, Gerald Ely asks, are ribbon controllers still a thing? Some synthesizers still come with them, but it's not as, you don't usually see them so much on controller keyboards. But some instruments still do come with that. All right. All right, reading through comments. All right, so Daniel asks, a few hours ago about Cubase 13 Pro, when I right-click to add a track, I get 3 options: Hallian, Retrolog, and Pad Shop, same as you now having your project. Is there more? So you should also get Groove Agent SE, but that may show under drums. But you could see, like, when you purchase your Cubase 13, so say we go to the Steinberg Download Assistant. Get this open, and when you go to My Products, everything that you see under the My Products area, so let's say we come here, so we say, okay, I have Cubase Pro 13, so here you'll make sure you get Spectral Layers 1, but you'll get the Hallian Sonic 7.1, its content, Groove Agent with its content, Retrolog, and Pad Shop, Iconica Sketch, which will show up inside of Hallian Sonic, as well as Verve inside of Hallian Sonic, and then a lot of different content set, which is the loops. So, and within Hallian Sonic, there's different categories of instruments as well. So all these, when you go to My Product, these are all included with your license. If you download other stuff that you don't have a license for, you'll probably get a message saying we don't have a license for that. But all these are free to use. But you should have Hallian Sonic will have many instruments within it, but also Groove Agent, which may show up under drums, you'll have available with your Cubase 13 license. All right, so we can see also, I never saw it before, Pad Shop. What does it do? So Pad Shop is kind of a granular synthesizer. So it's almost taking different samples apart, almost if you were to envision a piece of glass as an audio file, and if you were to think of the glass is actually kind of made from sand at kind of a core level, and then instead of kind of doing synthesis on the glass, you could do synthesis on the sand particles or the granules, hence the granular synthesizer. right, my chat field just jumped. Let me find my spot. Okay. All right, so we see, hi Greg, could you please explain functionality differences between Wavelab Elements and Pro? It's the mastering functionality I need, loudness, stereo image checks, mono compatibility, etc. Thanks. So we could think of, Wavelab Pro is going to have, some more capabilities. It has some additional plugins. One of the big other components is going to be also for dealing with multi-channel files, so obviously, we could deal with, stereo files, but if you're dealing with 5.1 or if you're editing 22.3 audio files, like, different, different channel configurations, the Pro version will handle that better. But I think, so loudness, stereo image checks, and mono compatibility you could do in Wavelab Elements, but you could always go to the Steinberg website and check out the comparison. And you could see what's in Elements versus Pro. So you could do 384K sample rates if you have a converter. I do. That supports that. So fewer plugins, fewer offline processes, fewer master section slots for running plugin. So you could kind of go through here and find like all of the different comparisons between the two programs. Okay. All right, so Mark Raven says that was a great hint, by the way, Greg. So wish I knew what it was. So can't remember what I said. And my voice has put Stella, Mark Raven's dog, to sleep. All right. All right, great to see you, Lawrence Koch from Rhode Island. Hope you had a great trip to the Pacific Northwest. All right, so Geekmaster just says, Joe, what's up? How do I put auto-tune on voices? So generally, auto-tune is going to work as a insert effect. So you can run it. Most people would run it as an insert. So you have something similar in Cubase. If you go to like the pitch correct under pitch shift, there's a pitch correct plugin where you could set the key that you want. So if you say, okay, I'm in the key of D major, you could set the key and have it tuned to that. So you can run it as an insert. I believe later versions that you could also run it as an ARA extension. So if you come to the track here and choose to you may see it show up as an extension right there that you could utilize, and then when you double click, the sample editor will turn into the auto tune interface. But try running as an insert effect. All right, so Darren's asking if there's any updates in the software winners from the trivia. So I haven't had a chance to hear back from my colleague that's getting the codes. I will try to follow it up on Monday so we can have it hopefully for Tuesday. All right, Millard Brown asks, hi Greg, hope you're doing well. Question, does Dorico integrate with Cubase as an alternative to the score editor? So currently not. They run as two separate programs. There has been some public statements that, that might be a direction that could be entertained. I think it's kind of a thing that a lot of people would want, so we'll have to see how development goes in the future. But, I think that might be a future path for integrating so that someone could start a project in Cubase and, basically have a Dorico-like experience, or be able to take all the work that you've done in the Cubase score editor and not have to start over again in Dorico. So I think that both development teams are aware of that customer desire. All right, so I see just a continued question from Soren, but I'm not sure if I see the first part in the chat. All right, so I see from Soren says, and I don't think I got the first part of the question, but a search function for patterns I see similar to what you program fast. So let me know if that's for Beat Designer, or maybe you could repost the first part of the questions. All right, so we see Lawrence had a good time at American Music and Long McQuaid. All right, so Steve Allen says, thanks for it works for me. Just added one to close all lanes, and now on the keyboard shortcut. All right. All right, so Roland Stuff just saying, thanks Greg for pointing me to that online Wavelab Elements /Pro comparison site. I hadn't seen that before. So yeah, they're usually pretty good about that. They used to kind of have comparisons in the past that would kind of show what's more similar between like different versions of Cubase or Wavelab, as opposed to what's different between them. So. All right, Steve Green asks, when importing Groove Agent, do the audio events have to be in musical mode in order for Groove Agent to follow the audio tempo? Okay, so let's say we'll start off with a new project here. Okay, so it could depend on like if you're doing loops versus other aspects. So let's say if I wanted to come over here, let's get to my Groove Agent one library. So let's say, okay, I want to find a snare drum. Okay, and so let's say I'm making my kit here. I want okay, so let's say we have a kick, snare, and we'll just do hi-hat. Okay, so let's say we have kick, snare, hi-hat, but let's say we also have a drum loop. Okay, so let's say I have like kind of one-shot samples for kick, snare, but I have a loop on another one-shot sample. All right. So what we could do is I'm gonna just program just, let's say, super generic drum beat here for 2 bars. Okay, so let's say now I play this pattern. Okay, so right now, and so it says when importing Groove Agent, audio events have to be in musical mode. So these audio events are being triggered by the MIDI events. So if I changed my tempo and we have the track set to musical mode, that these particular, that when I adjust my tempo here, that the MIDI events are following musical mode, but the actual, and then the MIDI events are triggering the one-shot samples. Now, if we have a loop, so let's say our loop is on E1, and I wanted that loop to be triggered, and for that to be in musical mode. So now we have a longer audio file. All right, so what you may have to do with when you're working with the particular loop is to tell the loop itself, so I think it's under sample, the audio warp, and we could put it on, let's say, music mode, and then we could sync to tempo. So now when I change the tempo, if it's kind of so I'm going to slow the tempo down, and now, so we start over again. I'll just let that play through. All right, so now that this sample is set to audio warp mode, now when I play, this will sync with the tempo. But so you don't have to do anything with so you don't have to do anything for one-shot samples, but if it is an actual like loop, because the one-shot samples are going to be triggered by the MIDI event, and if that MIDI track is set to musical mode, then the one-shot samples you don't have to worry about. But you know, when you have it set for a non-one-shot, then go into the sample editor and put it onto audio warp if you have like a loop and you want that loop to be triggered and for that to be in time. Okay. All right, so we see from Fontacia Studio. Hey, Master, thanks for everything. I have a question. I use Dante Virtual Sound Card for record some shows. Is it possible to monitor from the laptop headphone port? So generally not, because that's going to be on a different audio stream. So, if you are, I'm not sure if you're running PC or Mac. If you're on Mac, you could possibly utilize if you go to your audio MIDI setup and set up an aggregate device, but there's no way for the audio, the Dante Virtual Sound Card, and the clock for your built-in audio interface to be synchronized. So those would often be kind of out of time and drifting in and out of time. So it may be a little bit less than satisfying. But, so when you're doing that, realize that, a lot of things can be hooked up to the Dante system. You could get a Dante headphone box or a Dante audio interface that has headphone output. So I think that you can just get a headphone output and have that and use that for monitoring through your Dante, like the routing page. But you could have multiple devices running on Dante, but having the clock from the headphone out of your laptop's not going to be in sync, and that could throw off kind of your clocking. So get a Dante headphone box; they're available. So. All right, so we see PK. What key makes the player head start playing from the beginning all the time? So if you want to, so if you're playing, so let's say, we'll just mute the loop here. Sorry. All right, so like while you're playing, if you want to, I'll just extend this out a few times here. Okay, so while it's playing, if you hit the period key on a numeric keypads, you could do that if you want to immediately play the selection and loop it. If you hit Alt or Option plus P, that will immediately play and loop the selection. So Alt or Option plus the letter P, like play. You could also hold down Alt Shift and click anywhere that you want and play. And that could be contingent upon your grid settings. So if I want to go to beat 2 or beat 3, or if I only want it to be at the bar, so just Alt Shift. But if you want to go back to the beginning, the period key between 0 and enter on the numeric keypad, you can do that. So let me know if that makes sense for what you want to do. And there's also different start modes. So if you go to transport, you'll see start mode. So you can say play from project cursor or play from selection start. So if I have this event selected and I hit play, we could play from the selection start and come over to start mode, or play from cycle start. So if no selection is selected, it'll play from cycle. Or if there is a selection, the selection will overwrite the cycle. So you could also check out. And within the transport, within the start modes, there's also the return to start position on stop. So if I want to play right there, I could just automatically go back to where my start position was. So if we're at measure 10, and let's say, and depending on the start mode. So you can check out in 13 the different start modes as well. All right, wonderful to see Michael Pierce on from Grand Chapel Studios in England. All right, just reading through comments. All right, so just see from Soren says continuous search function for patterns. So it's similar to what you program fast. So I'm not sure if you want kind of like an AI type functionality to go back and forth, but you could always go to, like, if you want to look for patterns, it doesn't do kind of an analysis of it. But if we jump over here to presets and we go to, let me see where it's at. Pattern banks. So there are like pattern banks that you could access here and be able to kind of load up into Beat Designer. But there's no kind of like, find a pattern similar to this. Okay, reading through. Sorry. Okay, so Steve Green asked Greg, thanks. Which Steinberg interface allows simultaneously recording of minimum 4 tracks? So if you want 4 mic pre's, the UR44 is a great interface for that. And I think if you get the UR22 Mark II, I'll just check, but I think you have 2 mic pre's and 2 line level inputs. So this has 2 inputs, and I think that there's 2 line level inputs in the back. Oh, maybe just 2 and 2 out, but check out the UR44. Yeah, so the UR44C interface here. And this will give you 4 mic pre's. And then you get line inputs on the back as well. So you get 4 mic pre's and 2 line inputs. So, but that's a fabulous interface. Definitely would recommend it. See, Mark Rabin was wondering if anyone else got the Pro Drum loops from Steinberg. I couldn't get a license of it, so. All right, so we see a question from Jazzy Lamel, who asks, hey Greg, greetings. I'm trying to find a way to record all my reverb and delay effects as audio to be used in a tracking session. Is there a way to do that? So if you're doing, so let's say if we have like a voice here, and let's say it has reverb on it. So let's say even this, we'll add an effects channel here. Okay, and we'll take this track and route it to the send. All right, so now we have the reverb going on. Let's just drag a quick vocal file to.
Remember me. Remember me. Remember me. I started losing sight, but you and I.
All right, so let's say we have delays on this. I'm going to add an effects channel track. I'm going to take this and route it over. All right, so I have reverb on the drums and delay on the voice.
You and I. You and I. Me. You and I. Me. I started losing sight. Started playing sight. Started playing sight. I feel the way.
All right, so what I want to do now is take this, set my left and right locators around it. And when we go to export audio mixdown, we can see our two effects sends. I'll say, okay, let's export multiple. I'm going to take my effects channels, and I'm going to now put this into, we're going to create an audio track, and I'll say export. And now I could have my stereo file, but we could have the reverb soloed here. And the delay rendered. So now these are all rendered. So we basically just have taken the sound of these particular effects and have rendered them directly into the project. So let me know if that would make sense for your workflow. Hang on one second. My son is at the door. Give me just one moment. All right, sorry about that. Okay, reading through more comments, questions. I see Graham Witcher on from Oxford, England. Thanks for joining us today. Okay. Okay, so we see Rolling Stuff has to take off. We'll see you on Tuesday. Okay, let me jump to some questions that we had mailed in. Okay, so we had a question, how to duplicate events and keep them on the grid. Okay. All right, so let's take an example. Let's say we had an audio file, like a loop or something like that. And when we go to, let's say we want this to be duplicated on the grid, and let's say maybe it even comes in the middle of the bar. So we want this to be within the middle of the bar, but to be duplicated. So a lot of times what people will do is to select the event and hit like Control or Command D to duplicate. And what that does is it places the event right after, immediately following itself. So it's duplicating the event. But if we wanted to maintain this relationship at the beginning and after the event, we could come over here and use the range tool. So right now what we're going to do is, and I'll just turn my snap on as I do this, we're going to say, make sure we don't have any extra. So I'm going to grab the range of one measure. And now as I duplicate, that particular event will maintain its relationship within the bar, and we're duplicating the range of one bar, but this event is still staying at its relative position. So we don't want to duplicate the event if the event is not filling up the grid. So we don't want to do that because then we are off the grid. But what we want to do is to use not the selection tool but the range tool, and once we have a range selected of one measure, then duplicate that range like so. All right. Okay, so we had another question. One more for you. It says, hey Greg, I want to add a flanger effect to the whole mix in the beginning and on the bridge of a song. I don't want the effect on any of the vocal tracks though. So what's the best way to do this? I'm assuming you'd start by adding the effect plugin to the master bus to get it on the whole mix. How would you exclude the vocal tracks in this situation? Okay, so I'll put on something highly inappropriate musically, but let's say I have a track here and I want to put a flanger in all the instruments but not the vocals in different sections of the song. So let's say we'll take long time ago. Sorry, let me just let me open up another instance of this project here. Let's see if this is.
Do you recall the day we first met? That was a long, long time ago.
All right, so let's say I want to take like the guitar, bass, and send those tracks. So what I would do is just add a group channel, and this could be like a master group. So I would come over here, let's add a group track, and we'll make it a stereo group. And I would route all of the tracks. Like in this case, we could say, okay, I want to take this track and send it out to group 1. Okay, and I want to take the guitar, the bass, and the piano, and I'm just going to route this to group 1. So come over here to the piano, and again, so as we do this, I see group 1 here. So if I want to put a flanger on this, so we'll come over here to just select a different. All right, so go to modulation and say flanger. All right, so if you want the flanger on in different parts of the song, you can just come right over here. Let's automate the flanger.
Day we first met, that was a long, long time ago. It was 7th grade.
So I could just put this into right. So say I want the flanger to come in at this part.
You looked my way and your heart shone through. It caught my breath while you called me to. Well, even now I'm so in love with you, just like a long, long time.
All right, and I want the flanger coming up for this next part.
Oh, I remember the day.
So now as we listen back to it, we could just automate. So now our flanger will kick on, I think. So the flanger is not on the voices, just on the instruments. So route all the instruments to a group, put the flanger on that. It could be a pre-mix group. And then you could just automate the flanger going on and off, and that way only the instruments are being there. You don't have to worry about necessarily excluding. You're not worrying about delay compensation, so it could all be handled quite easily there. All right, so we had a question last week about Wavelab with the title splice markers. It says there are a combination of title start and title end markers. They are intended to be moved as one. However, sometimes the splice markers fall apart into separate end and start markers. This happens maybe 15 to 20% of the time, which is often enough to be a nuisance. Touch wood, but so far it's only happened to splice markers inserted by the album wizard, not to manually inserted markers. As a matter of fact, the only solution I've been able to figure out when this happens is to manually insert a splice marker. Repair the first clip list by copying the name of the damaged clip, delete the start and end marker, and then manually move inside its splice marker in place. It's quite a few steps to achieve, but should only take one. I haven't been able to figure out a common denominator why this happens. It appears to be random. Can I have discovered a bug? If so, I request that it be named after me, or is it my right as discoverer? All right, so let's take a look at this in Wavelab. So I couldn't reproduce this. But I generally, so let's say if I'm here, we'll open up a project and we'll come over here. So let's say I want to go to my album. So we'll go to the album. So I'm not sure if you're using, and when I go to the album wizard, so I'm not sure if you're using the album wizard, because usually the album wizard inserts. So I'm not sure if you're doing splice markers. So usually I just have, create markers at the boundary. I'll add the splice markers at the boundary, but that's generally off. So now when I come over and let's say move an event, it seems like the splice markers are always kind of intact. But, let me know if there is a particular reason that you're using splice markers versus the default CD markers. And I guess that if you come over to your markers here, that you could switch them to, so I'm not sure, if you're just, not wanting to use like the title, start and end markers. So, but generally that's what I do, and I haven't had any issues with it. But if you could trace down the steps, I'm sure we could, name a bug after you. All right, and we have another question in Wavelab. Says if I could add another question. I got a voucher for my Steinberg for AAC Fraunhofer encoding in Wavelab Pro. I found it and activated it in Activation Manager. However, I was told that there should be installed some sort of in the download assistant, which I'm unable to find what gives. So I'm not sure if you need the AAC Fraunhofer. So let's say if I'm editing a particular file here and I want to render it, the encoders are kind of included with Cubase, so I don't think that you have to install them. So let's say if we want to do this, and instead of a WAV file by default, that if we go to edit the single format, so here we can see that the audio format's PCM compressed. And then, if you want to do MPEG 3, we could choose, which encoding that you're using. So if you wanted to use Fraunhofer or Lame, but when we do this, I don't think you need the AAC, because we could just come over and like one of the presets that you're going to have. So let's say if we go to factory presets and we go to encoded, that you have kind of the iTunes standard for the AAC encoding directly there. So I don't think that you need to download a separate installer for that at all. So I think, Wavelab will have the AAC encoder as well as different, two different MP3 encoders built in. All right. We jump back to our live questions. You can always mail questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right. Okay, just really reading through comments. All right, Jazzy Lamel asks, so Sorry for hitting my mic. Hey, Greg, every time I make a new template start, I notice that the record enabled button disappeared. Is there a way to fix this, and why is it doing that for? Okay. So it could be, let me just exit out of this. All right, when you come over here at the very bottom of the track list, you can see, you probably have simple selected or it's set to recording, or sometimes if it's set to mixing, you don't have the record enable or monitor enabled. So you could have different presets that are set up here. So just make sure before you save your template that you have it set, and there's a little settings cogwheel so that you could say, okay, for my audio track, I want these particular settings to be seen or these settings to be hidden. For instrument, sampler, MIDI, group, marker, etc., chord. So we can come over and choose exactly what's up and what parameters, but easily just come over here and make sure that you have it set to standard and then save the template. So it could be that. So I would do that, and I think that would be preserved for you. All right, so we see Eric Fox. Hello, Greg. Is there a chance that in some future update it will be implemented routing track stacks in Logic and Cubase 13? I really miss those. So I'm not sure. I've never run Logic, so I'm not sure what the track stacks are. But maybe if you could. So I'm not sure if it's like because a lot of times what we could do is put stuff. So I'm not sure if it's something along the lines of, okay, we'll do, let's say, new project here. And I have all these tracks. Let's say I got my 12 tracks, and I put these into, let's say, we'll move it to a folder, and then I could record enable or route these. And if I wanted to take all of these tracks, and there's even a macro that comes with Cubase to and your macro list probably would duplicate where we could say selected events to marker and group, selected tracks to same folder and add group channel. So we could come here. But if you get to explain what the track stacks are, it's always possible in the future. I'm sure developers are aware of the issue, but I personally don't run Logic, obviously. So, all right, so we see Peter wishing everyone a safe and enjoyable weekend. He has to take off. Thanks for joining us. All right, and we see Recyclop joining us from Finland. Okay, Robert Daisy Webb just says, hi, Greg, no questions today, but hope you're doing great and having an amazing time. Yeah, I'm going to a concert tonight, so I'm excited to see that and get to visit with my friend. See, Mark Raven just says, wow, Gratitude overlooked that feature totally. Okay, this Jazz Dude saying this weekend, take a deep dive into the MIDI Logical Editor and MIDI Logical and Project Logical Editor presets. All right, let's see. I think we are out of questions. Let's see if there's any more questions that kind of pop up. I want to thank everyone for all the great questions that were asked. I hope that everyone's learned a new tip or trick. And if you have, make sure that you hit the like button and that you are subscribed to the channel. Look in your My Steinberg account and make sure that There's some great vouchers that you could take advantage of for some deep savings in celebration of Steinberg's 40th anniversary. So that's a good time to take advantage of those things. I'm just going to set a preference here real quick. All right, we'll see if there's more. See, Daniel doesn't have any more questions. All right, there's usually about a 20, 30 second delay. We'll see if there's more that. All right, great to see David M. Says he has no questions, but just a visit to hit the like button. Hope you're doing well, David. So John Koskin says he learned some interesting finesse stuff today. Thanks, everyone. All right, Michael Pierce is promising a recipe for cheesy broccoli soup for the next live stream. Now it's starting to get colder, so we'll take advantage of Michael Pierce's soup recipes in addition to Michael Team's ice cream selections. All right, so you see Catherine Leduc saying goodbye. It says thanks for your dedication. All right, she's wishing everyone enjoy their weekend. Give it another just a little bit of time. See if there's any other questions. If not, we'll wrap up early. All right, thank you for the kind words, Daniel. All right, so I think we are officially out of questions. Thanks for all the wonderful questions from everyone. I want to thank everyone for just making this such a wonderful communal and experience and such a great example of what an online community could be. I appreciate everyone's questions and just I feel fortunate to be involved with the group, and just want to thank everyone for taking time out of your day, whether it's the morning, afternoon, evening, late night, middle of the night, to learn more about Steinberg products. We'll be back on Tuesday of next week at the same time, so Tuesday and Friday. Again, the index, because I'm going to a concert tonight, will probably show up tomorrow morning, so it won't be done tonight because I'll be at the concert, but we'll just so just a quick heads up on that. Jazzy says, have fun at the concerts. I look forward to going with my friend Clay Oswald. So look forward to seeing him. And all right, and with that, I want everyone to please stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you back on Tuesday. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you Tuesday. Goodbye.